Ladies and gentlemen, this is Vadim Gluzman. I'm the artistic director of the North Shore Chamber Music Festival, and we're welcoming you to another installment of our series called Masters of the Past, Present, and Future. And we're presenting a very special event, very special to me personally. It is a screening of an extraordinary film called Life on Jupiter. And I right away would like to welcome the director and producer of this movie, Martin Spinelli. This film was produced and made over 20 years ago in New York, and it tells the story of one of the most extraordinary musicians I have ever met in my life, and had privilege of working with, performing with him, and witnessing his performances as a member of the audience, Jens Nygaard. Mr. Spinelli produced a sensational documentary, truly one of the greatest movies about classical music, in my humble opinion. Uh, and I would like to welcome Martin and maybe talk a little bit about how this came about. What made you uh, uh, drawn to this incredible man? How did you meet Jens?
Thank you, Vadim. I met Jens because I had moved into the neighborhood and I had a couple of friends in the neighborhood. One of them is Steve Ross, who is a famous pianist of the American Songbook and singer. And he said, "Oh, you must go hear this Jupiter Symphony and meet Jens Nygaard." And so when I first got to town, I went over to one of the performances and I was very impressed with the church, Jens, the fact that he was so amicable and spoke to the people in the audience. And I thought, this is a fascinating person I never had heard about, even though I had lived in New York 20 years prior. And then what happened is I was looking for a possible project, and the editor, Michael Grenadier, said to me, we can make a documentary with these new cameras, and all you need is a proper subject, and we can see what can happen. So it really came out of the blue that I went and spoke to Jens and said, "Can I have lunch with you? I want to talk to you about a documentary." And he said, uh, "Okay, let's do it." And we sat down, and he said, "Well, I have been told by many other people that maybe I should have a documentary made. And I think you are the one to do it." He said this in the first meeting. And he said, "And I don't want to look like a two-headed cow. A lot of these people think I'm exotic and I'm a funny character, and I don't want that to happen." I said, "I assure you won't." So we signed a contract, like one page, and off we went.
That's incredible. And the process of making this film, I remember personally, you and your crew and cameras in the church for performances following Jens. Do you feel he changed anything about himself, about his behavior, about the way he even made music, knowing that something important was happening?
Actually, very little. I mean, there were times when we asked him to do things or we asked him to talk about certain things, but ordinarily I would say no. I think he wasn't much different on camera than he was off camera, and he just is who he is, and just let that happen. So that was also a blessing. He wasn't self-conscious about the camera or me, and he certainly wasn't self-conscious about the audience to whom he spoke openly.
Audience, I think this was, well, it's probably impossible to pinpoint one, but certainly audience was one of his greatest loves. For him to have the audience in front of him, or better say, behind him, of course, being a conductor,
Yeah.
knowing that there are people there and exchanging the energy with them. I know this was one of the greatest gifts, and it really comes across in your film. I have to confess, I was watching it the other day, as I knew we were going to have this presentation and have this interview. Uh, and the incredible emotion and incredible energy of that movie. This is besides how wonderfully it is flowing from beginning to the end. But that emotion and energy, this is something that I feel is absolutely unique. You managed to capture Jens for who he was, a truly unique voice, a truly unique individual. Um, did you know it as you were filming? Did you know
I
what
I,
who
I
what was
didn't
it going
know
to
that
be?
we would have something that was as emotionally captivating during the filming. I knew it was important, and I knew that his life was not going to last much longer. So somebody said to me, "You better work fast." And um, there were a couple of times when I thought, is he the real thing? Because I'm not a musicologist. I never pretend to be a music critic, but I talked to one person after another who were top bananas in the field, and they said, "Oh no, this is the real thing. He's as good as it gets." So I thought, oh great, and I had them on camera, and I thought, okay, I'm capturing something special. And then I was very lucky to hire an editor, Lisa Pellatella, who was a musician, and she fell in love with Jens. So she loved the footage, and she said, "We have to capture this. We have to get something like that." And she'd put together sequences, and she'd say, "What about this?" And so she put together. She is a real musician, and it was helpful in the editing that I had someone of that talent.
Wonderful. Um, as you got to know both Jens and Mein, his partner, and a real engine and behind Jupiter Symphony back then. I'm sure you saw how special this whole organization is, how unique. Um, when there, I will give a little secret that there is a second segment to your wonderful documentary, uh, Life on Jupiter, which was filmed sadly after Jens was gone. Uh, we in this presentation we will not have the time to screen both, but I'm sure eventually this will happen. Um, did you feel that his spirit and his ideas, his shall I say artistic direction, lives on once it was decided that the series will continue?
I was amazed that it did, and that it still has a following. I talked to Mei Ying, his partner and wife, periodically, and catch up because I now live in Florida. And she just goes and goes, and I don't know how she does it, but she keeps the thing together, and it put together more performances than many series. And the other thing that fascinates me as time goes on is how people who were kids out of school or in their first few years as fledgling musicians, as they were all excellent, the ones that he chose. But now I see them performing down here. They're the headliners, including yourself. I've seen your name in lights, Vadim Glusman, and several others, and I say, wow, I knew those kids back when. I mean, we met 22 years ago now. And it's fascinating that he sure knew how to pick them too. He really had very high standards for the musicians that he selected.
Well, and that brings me to one very special side of the continuation of the Jupiter story today, that Jupiter truly lives on, and what we today know as Jupiter Symphony Chamber players are led by my dear friend Michael Volpert. He is the
Yes.
artistic director. He actually introduced me to Jens back in mid 90s when I just
Ah,
moved to New York, and I will never forget our first lunch together, just like yours. Uh, we agreed that we will perform together Tchaikovsky concerto, and he said immediately to me, "I am the best accompanist you will ever play with." And I have to say, now he's been gone for over 20 years. He truly was.
really?
He
Okay.
truly was. He had this gift of knowing. where I was going to be before I even knew that I wanted that. That was truly something incredible. And he asked me, the first question he asked me, so where are you from? And I had the shortest answer I could offer was, I'm from Israel. And the program of that concert began, the concert that we played together for the first time, began with a piece by an Israeli composer, Paul Ben Chaim, that's called From Israel.
Oh,
And then I played the Tchaikovsky concerto.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was one of the most touching, just a gesture of welcome, uh, which continued until sadly the day he died. But we now have what we know as Jupiter Symphony chamber players, still continuing in this wonderful Good Shepherd's Church on 66th Street, excuse me.
66th, right?
66th. And number of our festivals scholarship fund, the Arkady Fomin Scholarship Fund, have been and are performing on this series. And this is the new generation, the likes of Julian Rhee, Janice Carissa, Fiona Kuhn, who her sister Hina, Jacqueline Audas, the list goes on and on and on. Joshua Brown, etc., etc. We have quite a number of fantastic young kids who are basically carrying the torch.
Wow.
And I very much hope that in some years from now, somebody will say the same words as you just did. They sure knew how to pick them. I really hope that we're continuing the circle. We're carrying the light that Jens was emanating.
Well, that's a wonderful mission.
I do think that it is a must for all of us, for all artists, to make sure that there is tomorrow for what we do. And you have given us an incredible gift of this movie, a gift of memory about an extraordinary artist. And I thank you from all of us for being with us, for sharing your story, and may Jupiter light be bright on for many years to come.
Well, thank you. It was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life to be engaged with Jens Nygaard and the Jupiter Symphony. And then to have all that recognition was also fun to see. We went from festival to festival, and it was very gratifying. I'm very glad I met him and all of you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martin, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye-bye.
And now, please enjoy the exclusive screening of the Emmy Award-winning documentary about the extraordinary Jens Nygaard and his Jupiter Symphony. This presentation is provided to us by its producer-director, Martin Spinelli, and editor, Michael Grenadier.
I think if Zeus came to life on Mount Olympus, this would be Beethoven. Big and muscular and crude and uncivilized and wondrous and idealistic, and with mud on his boots. And if Beethoven comes in your living room and you try to take the mud off his boots, you've cleaned him up, but you've lost Beethoven. I've never had a conducting lesson in my life. I'd been homeless, I'd been in a mental institution. I elected to find whatever ray of sunlight there was, and when I had that 1% of optimism, I built on it, and it grew. I used to sit on the stoop there in Harlem, and I dreamed at that time of having a great orchestra, and I'm almost there. To create an ongoing atmosphere where people want to come there day after day after day, and as I say colloquially, bust their butt. That is the greatest triumph of my life, is to be able to create an atmosphere, a working atmosphere for the musicians.
I was really surprised to see what kind of quality we're dealing with, and that it's actually the great experience of my life to work with Jens Nygaard.
And almost on that little bodily impulse.
He's regarded by musical cognoscenti as one of the great musicians of the 20th century.
I have never, as a professional musician, been engaged to play somewhere where there wasn't a fee involved, because that's the professional arrangement. You play for a fee. An electrician gets paid, or a plumber gets paid, and musicians presumably get paid for their work. But for Jens, this is something quite different, and you know that he is doing this on a shoestring. I know he doesn't get paid a thing for any of those concerts. It's his oxygen, those concerts, and it's a privilege to make music with him, and I know my colleagues feel the same way.
Playing with Jens is just a totally refreshing experience. I can do absolutely anything I want as a soloist, and he's there. I hesitate to even use the word conductor. He's a teacher, really. He's a teacher. He's the maestro, you know, le maître. Yeah.
With Jens, unlike many, there is no barrier between him and music. And that barrier most often is conductor's ego. And with Jens, you never see it. Then the second thing for me is level of trust. Once you step on stage and there are people in the hall, with Jens you feel like there is nothing can go wrong. After the first rehearsal, I knew I can play with him any piece.
I'm really a throwback. I'm an anachronism today because I'm an old Kapellmeister. I really belong in the 18th century. I mean, if you need a cantata written for Sunday, I write it. If you need somebody to play viola, I do it. In other words, I'm not really of the 20th century. I'm a throwback. The three primary shaping forces in my life are the one and only Jascha Heifetz. Sir Donald Francis Tovey, the great English writer about music, and my father. That's a picture of my daddy as a sailor in the Danish Navy. And after the First World War, he was a musician on liners, and he made 49 trips across the Atlantic, and he wound up in Omaha, Nebraska. And from there, he was in vaudeville. He was the conductor for Birth of a Nation. He then joined the John Philip Sousa Band, where he played clarinet and also saxophone in a little entertainment group that Sousa pulled out. And then he settled in Longview, Texas, and had this nightclub called Enjoy It Nightclub. And I was born in the nightclub. And then the Depression came along, and it was no longer possible for my daddy to make a living with that. So then he began to teach music in the public schools. In Haynesville, Louisiana, he organized one of the very first string programs in all of the state of Louisiana, and I was the first fiddler for it. My daddy taught me, but I really am the kind of person that just learns these things. I mean, when I was 9 or 10 months old, that there was a tuba in the middle of the floor, and I went there and I was trying to blow on the tuba, and by the time I was 2 and a half, I was already playing the little E-flat clarinet. I just have such a curiosity and such a love for everything that makes music that I learned to play all of the instruments in the orchestra. My father was the one who gave me access to French horns and clarinets and tubas, and I just absolutely devoured every one of those instruments. But my mother, in contradistinction, was different. I had great pressure from her. I've suffered from mental illness, profound mental illness, my whole lifetime. It runs in my family. I get it from my mother. My mother had it, but didn't really know what it was. Well, if you have the blues, just snap out of it. A psychiatrist was as far away from my mother as the governor. I was very badly treated by her. I used to be locked up in closets. I mean, that's terrifying. I was forced by my mother to practice. This is so perverse. Then I'd have to go to the bathroom, so I would go, and it turned out to be 55 seconds, and I would notate this 55 seconds that I had not been practicing. So for years, I couldn't even face going to my mother's grave. Anytime I see child prodigies now, I really go and I tell the parents, go easy. Make sure that this person can be a child. Kids need to jump rope, and they need to play basketball, and they need to go out and be kids. I was not. I was always a child prodigy, and it's a mixed blessing. Well, I had a checkered existence. I quit high school after the 10th grade and had to take a number of examinations to get in Louisiana State University. And the band director had offered me a full scholarship there as the solo clarinetist of the band. I was a very troubled individual when I went off to college. Had a lot of wild oats to sow, played pool a lot, drank a lot of beer, and I had dance bands. When I was playing Sweet Sue and Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree and all these wonderful things, I thought that was the height of existence. I never intended to do anything but stay there and do that the rest of my life. But as things evolved, I wanted a bigger horizon, so I came to New York. I came with my clarinet, my violin, some of my compositions, and I tried to get in Juilliard, and they said, well, the only thing you could do is to take the piano exam. And I was accepted as a pianist. And here's the present Manhattan School, the former Juilliard. But it was a hellhole for me. It was an absolute hellhole for me. They never even would consider my talent, and part of it had to do with the fact that I'm gentle and I was a Southerner. I mean, for you to think of somebody coming from a little town in Arkansas or Louisiana, they don't expect a major talent to come from there. They expect it to come from Harvard Square or from Bryn Mawr. So I just got pushed aside. I remember I wanted to study conducting. He said, oh, nope, all you can do is to be in the piano slot. So I was ground out like a meat grinder. And after a few years, I got the bachelor's and the master's in piano. Not that I'm a bad pianist, but that was too narrow for me. There were so many things that I wanted to do. Luckily, there were some teachers at Juilliard, especially the great Leonard Rose, cellist, who made me his studio accompanist. And I think I got, I believe it was $2.50 or $3 an hour for accompanying his pupils in school. And that helped to keep me in living expenses. Then I really hit some hard times, eventually having a nervous breakdown. I'd have a time that I didn't have any place to stay, and those were homeless nights. And then at other times, I know I had some friends at International House. I would go and sleep on the floor, sometimes in their room. I didn't have the money. I had to save the money for food. That's how these homeless periods were. Genius and mental illness being connected, I can tell you for sure that's true, because the one is a door into the other. There were times when my anguish was so great that I had to walk down on the street because I felt that I might throw myself out the window. Ultimately, like a great crystal, I broke and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Through it all, I've also been creative. And there is, in my case, in Schumann's case, my goodness, I just wish that he could come back and I could share my Wellbutrin with him. You know, God, I'd love that. I'm a walking sick person, but I have a character of steel. I've put it back together. Paradoxically, I've put it back stronger than ever.
I knew him shortly after he had been homeless on the street and had a complete breakdown. And I used to hear of this shadowy figure, Jens Nygaard. I was maybe 20 years old and I was a little taken aback. But he came over to me very warmly in International House and said, yo, my friend, I'm Jens Nygaard. And I heard you the other day and I think you're all very talented. And I'd like to help. And I thought, oh, yeah. And my friend, you're very talented, and you know, but there's some things, you know, if you all would think about them, that would really improve the playing. And there was a napkin there, and he took out a pencil, and he drew a diagram of how I was using the bow on the string, and drew a diagram of what would be a much more economical and physically more viable way of doing it. And he explained it to me, and all that. I said, you all can take this, my friends, you ought to try it. And if you're interested, here's my number. And I went home, put that diagram on the bureau, drew the bow a couple of times my way, then looked at his diagram and drew it his way, and drew maybe my first comfortable bow I'd ever drawn in my life. And I tried a few things, practiced for about a half an hour, went over to the phone and dialed the phone number. Well, never ever was there anything he ever told me, physically, technically, that is not absolutely 100%. There's just no question.
That's right. Now that's what I like. Now for you, sounds very coarse and gruff, eh? But I'm not interested in you playing for yourself. I'm interested in you playing for Mrs. Jones out there. Right? Got to get used to it. That's why if you were close to Heifetz, that's what you heard. You heard. It's very simple what I do. I'm able to X-ray in to see where the unnaturalness is. And when I undo the unnaturalness, then they play better. That peripheral kick on your turnaround. It's just like a shake my hand. That's too tenuous. I want an intimate. I want that. I want the same thing here. See, get in, hold that thing in your hands. Hold that thing. Take a hold of it. My dear, that is so much better. You can hear it. But I don't want you to hear it. I want you to feel it. I never want you to judge anything by what it sounds like. Everything has to do with this, the immediacy of the muscles. Because if you judge it by sound, it's too late. Everything has to be here, and you have to trust that what you do here is going to produce a certain sound out there. So everything is technique. That's all there is technique. That's all there is. That's all you ever need is technique. I lived on the edge of Harlem, paid $46 a month rent on a 6th floor walk up. I was home painting the ceiling of that 6D apartment at Tiemann Place, and I got a call and said, Mr. Nygaard, could you come out to Westchester? Our conductor can't be here this evening. Could you take the next train at 125th Street and come and conduct our chorus? So I went out there and I conducted that big amateur chorus of about 150, and they asked me if I would please become their conductor. I took the really good people and I founded the Westchester Chamber Chorus and Orchestra, which was absolutely a crack ensemble.
I went to one of those concerts and was bowled over, first of all, by the musical intelligence that was manifest in that music making. Secondly, by the sheer exuberance and vitality of the music making. I went up to Jens after the concert, introduced myself, told him I had had a remarkable musical experience.
In classical music, I think it's harder to achieve commercial success. Jens could have made a fortune as an accompanist. He could have been the greatest accompanist of all time. He breathed with the musicians. Again, even as an accompanist, he brought out the best in them. They were still teasing Jens about business cards he had printed up, and it was Jens Nygaard, and in the middle of the card it said musician. And all his friends said, you can't say musician, you have to say, you're an accompanist, you're a cellist, you're a violinist, you're this, that, or the other thing. And Jens couldn't understand why they couldn't understand that he was musician. And it's true, he is and was. And it's so all-encompassing, this talent of his, that I think that's been part of the difficulty. I think people can't grasp him.
I've been around New York for a long time, knocking around trying to get things going. And I'd done a lot of smaller things, but I just couldn't get anything to happen. I felt like a very healthy pea pod that had fallen on concrete. Now that fate had fallen on concrete. Was the pea pod healthy? Yes. Was the concrete able to give it any nourishment? No. In other words, I was blocked out. In 1970, I was just about to give up music. Not that I really didn't have musical talent to hang with it. I was just not going to stay here and become embittered. I would not do that. And then Yehudi Menuhin invited me to Vienna, and I went there and taught people from 57 countries around the world. They asked some of us as teachers at the beginning to give a lecture. So what I did is I said, my friends, I want to take you into the world of conjecture. So I took the Opus 18 number 1 string quartet of Beethoven, and I wrote it the way Haydn might have written it, the way Mozart might have written it, the way Salieri might have written it, and I wrote it the way those motifs might have been developed by Beethoven in the middle period and the late period. Right or wrong, that is a very audacious thing to do. But I did it very well. And at that point, I had everybody respecting me. I came back here so absolutely thrilled with being alive, and I had found a place where I was respected, that the first thing I did was to play all of Mozart's 30 piano concertos. And over a period of 2 years, I did that. Then George Jelinek, who at the time was the music director of WQXR, he spoke to Mr. Schoenberg about me and said, would you please meet with him? He's the big man in music of our age. So I asked him, sir, if I can raise the money, would you sit in judgment on me? I flew to Little Rock. My kid sister picked me up, and we went to the bank the next morning, and my cousins, who are farmers and local people that work in the oil drilling business or various things. I said, I have to leave here tomorrow with $14,000. Would you put up the collateral? And they did. And I came back and organized an orchestra. We did a very good performance, and I woke up and read this critique in the New York Times. Jens Nygaard made of Beethoven's 8th Symphony a sparkling, beautifully proportioned jewel. It must be a joy for musicians to play under a conductor of such expertise. That was my career right there. Mr. Schoenberg was the only person that was powerful enough to overcome all the rejections that I had had. The way it got the name Jupiter is that it suddenly struck me when NASA sent the wonderful, wonderful rocket up there and took the great pictures of Jupiter. The planet Jupiter is so gaseous that you can't really get there, and it's like perfection. You can shoot for it, but you can't get there. It clicked in my mind, Jupiter Symphony. So I called NASA and asked them if they would let us use that picture. And either a phone call or a letter said, we don't want to see it appearing on string bean cans. We want you to use it as a logo for yourself. So at that point, it became the Jupiter Symphony. And we made our debut in Carnegie Hall. I was an underground person, the darling of the Village Voice, because it did all these kind of kooky, unusual things. But to be presented by Carnegie Hall and for NASA to hand me that phenomenal picture, I could have sold 4-day-old tomatoes. That was such a calling card. I would call up and say, do you have any tickets for the Jupiters? No, I'm sorry, it's sold out. And I was so proud. It was so shocking that I would stand up against Cammie Hall on the north side of 57th Street, and I would watch people go over there and look at my sign. I could not believe it. See, I was living up in Harlem at the time, and this was a big event. This is a big Carnegie Hall, and sold out. Some people don't like it when an outsider comes in and has a great success. After such a great year, I was deeply disappointed that we were not asked back. Then people were erroneously saying, well, Jens is a genius, but you can't live with him. Nobody can deal with him. He just messes everything up. That's not true. So it never was true. So we went to Tully Hall. The Rockefeller Foundation had said, okay, we're going to give you money, not much, but they gave me $35,000, but we're going to force on you a board who didn't do a damn thing. And so now I'm very touchy about board. I won't have people on there that just meet to tell me I can't do Haydn Symphony 47. I can only do 104 because the audience knows it. I've never been eager to attain anything that meant that I had to momentarily compromise. Some people say, well, you can whore a little bit, and then when you get what you want, you can clean it up. I don't believe that way. I had rather, as a matter of fact, die in a gutter with my conscience clear and my integrity intact than to be a millionaire conducting the New York Philharmonic. That's how brittle I am. But I'm proud of that. I'm profoundly proud of that. That's me, that's my religion, that's my morality. After about a decade, we simply couldn't afford to stay at Tully. We had to move.
And he got red lights thrown at him in different ways because he didn't fit into the green rooms and parlors of certain fancy places with certain fancy images. But Jens gave everything he had to give, and he will until the day he drops.
When you have in your soul the ability to give something, it's the most glorious thing in the world. I want to use music as a social tool. It's a godly force of enormous strength. And I want to use music, I do, to break down barriers between people. The other day when we went down to play in this lunch program that Hebrew Union College presents, and I saw how they were doing it. They were doing it with tablecloth, with these wonderful people meeting. They're not the homeless, they're guests. They're guests. They got it right. People don't listen to the music, but they knew that we were there for them. I'm always looking for that. When they had the earthquake in Kobe, I went there. We organized an orchestra, raised money for them, and played for the homeless. When I went to Cape Town, South Africa, perhaps 15 years ago, I knew if I got there that I could make a difference, and I integrated the concerts.
To him, Nygaard, a concert in an old people's home. That is not less important than Carnegie Hall, because the spirit of this music is alive and real.
Can I just go there 1 second? And I'll be right back, can I? When I went to this shelter, battered women's shelter, and I said, "Dear ladies, would you like to learn to play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony?" One, 1, 2, 3, green chord. 3, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2. Now these are people who have never played music. And I said, "Do you want to play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony?" And it is one of these little kind of quick things that you don't have to know anything. Just do 3, 3, 4, 5, the way I've written it up there. The fingers fall into a pattern, and underneath there, if it's green, you play one note, and if it's red, you play the other note, and here they are, completely untutored, playing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So when we go back there the next time, I had 4 or 5 of these gals, because they'd be there for quite some time. Oh, let me show you. Oh, let me show you. I want to play it. I want to play it. And here they were, playing. I saw in the bottom part of the front page of the New York Times a picture of the Gershwin home in Brooklyn in the terrible slums of East New York. It said that they're going to bulldoze it down. Well, that activated me. Boy, howdy. So I worked for months and months and months and months and months. And I was planning to have what I call summertime concerts in the front porch of George Gershwin's home. I was actually planning to live there with a policeman because it was in hell. Right? But I guess maybe it's my masochism coming to the fore. The very fact that it was there is what interested me. I got a call in the middle of the night from the fire department telling me that the home had burned. Even though it's a tragedy, I feel triumphant about that. In failing, there's a certain nobility if your goal is very high.
When Jens was forced to leave the Tully Hall concerts, he found this church which had been at Lincoln Center all along, the Church of the Good Shepherd. It's beautiful, and the acoustics are incredible. The intimacy of the setting where the orchestra is on the same floor with the audience. There's no boundary line like any other concert. It's a little strange at first when you're a performer because you feel as if you need the boundary line of the stage and the backstage, and you cannot be seen by the audience, and you come out when it's your time to perform. But with Jens, he's there already. When you walk into the church, he's chatting with the audience. There's no difference. There's no line of demarcation. And when it's time for the concert, it starts. And suddenly this miraculous event begins. There's something so extraordinary that happens every time.
When you do things and you cut the pretension, when people sit almost in the orchestra, they really love that. So it makes it a big family, and our thing is growing enormous. A man, I don't think I even looked at it yet, but a man came here from, I guess I should be more practical. Man came here from Nashville and gave me a check. I think it was $3,000. And yeah, let's see what this is. Yeah, look at that.
You got it?
Yeah. And we have a man that's just moved to Australia, and he said, I'm going to send you $1,000 for the rest of my life each year. I need that money, not for me, not for soloists, but to stabilize my group so that they don't have to go and take other jobs. When there's an opportunity for them to take a job which pays much more, I'm the one who tells them, get out. You've got to go do that. But it doesn't take very much analysis to know that that is self-defeating for the standard. But I'm more moral than I am seeking the high standard. But get enough money that they can pay rent and food from what they can earn in Jupiter, and then very quickly we're a great orchestra. I've learned to be very tough. I'm enormously tough. I'm kind of the wild one, because if I were to look in the bank beforehand, these things wouldn't be occurring. So I don't wait by the phone for things to happen, for somebody to call. I get off my butt, so to speak, and get to work. And I sweep the floor and I edit the music. I have no hierarchies about that. Whatever has to be done.
We have no administrative costs, virtually. I mean, even things like printing. All our programs we do in-house. Posters, flyers, tickets are produced in-house. Jens takes nothing for himself, or very little. And the rest of it goes for rent and things like advertising. Plus, we also need to get the music prepared. Jens does all the bowings himself.
That's telling all the string players whether they should go up or they should go down, whether they should have a little pause here, a little lift there, whether the stroke should be long or short. They're very crucial if you want your interpretation to be totally integrated.
To a degree, it's a mechanical thing that needs to be done. You can do it while you're doing something else. Or like my people down home, they would shell peas and chuck corn or something and still talk and say, this is very easy for me. And I often do it on subways. It's a mechanical thing. But it really pays off.
He's a self-taught kind of guy. He's a natural talent. It's rough-hewn and it's unique. You know, he doesn't use a baton, he uses a chopstick. I think he's the only conductor I've ever seen who does that. I mean, he's not interested in any kind of show at all. He's interested in the music.
You played beautifully today. That's why I wanted all, well, come on, we all do the best we can, and you're wonderful, and I'm proud of you.
You know, after the concert, all the chairs are moved by the members of the orchestra. There aren't any stagehands. When the piano has to be moved, the bass player and one of the violinists will move it. They're happy to do it. It's a real cooperative venture. It's like a family, and everybody helps.
Jens looks for people who want to be a part of the family, people who want to be involved, not just show up, get your check, and go home. It's really not about that.
Now, wait a minute. Wear your seatbelts. I love you. I care about you. The statistics say wear them.
Okay, I will.
Now, please.
I will. No,
now, please.
He digs into rare corners of the repertory. He will do symphonies which nobody has done, but for him. His mind is totally inquisitive, searching, delving, caring.
I do a lot of music, but I feel a moral responsibility to these great composers whose works have been overlooked. It's a moral crusade on my part.
These are great songs.
The music of Chaminade, Ethelbert Nevin, a lot of the music of John Philip Sousa and Catelby, because that is something that my father and mother had played in vaudeville a lot. You would never find Juilliard doing this or the music schools. I mean, it's beneath them. That's junior high school music, and you outgrow it. But I don't think you outgrow anything that's profound and wonderful and a lot of fun.
As you grow up, there are people telling you what's tasteful, what's not. This is a classical approach, this is a romantic approach, this is that. Jens, it's as though he never heard any of this. He came down from another planet and was never subjected to any of the rules and regulations and traditions and mores that we have had pounded into us about music or anything else. He conducts and plays, he does everything in music with a great love for music. That is not shared among all musicians. He's never burnt out. Everything is almost for the first time and glorious.
Sounds very difficult, but it's not.
You know, Jens is a composer as well as a conductor, and there are times when he has written extra movements in a piece without crediting himself. He'll stick in an extra piece by Rameau or somebody, and you think it's them, but it's Jens.
Well, I don't play what's there. I'm an old jazz musician, and I sort of play of the moment. You really feel like you played some Rachmaninoff.
Mozart's C minor concerto 491 with Jens, and there's a time when the orchestra stops playing and it's just the piano, it's just a solo effort. Those are the cadenzas. Mozart sometimes wrote cadenzas, but sometimes he just left them blank. It's for the performer to do as he wished, to improvise it or whatever. And I mentioned this to Jens, and he wrote me one, and it's a remarkable cadenza, extremely original, like nothing else. You know, it was him in a cadenza.
I'm not really a conductor. Somebody needs to be up there to lead, but I just as soon play the cymbal and have just one crash. Most of these damn conductors, almost all of them, they need a psychiatrist. They need to go and work out their need to manipulate people and come to it for the right reason. I do have this cancer.
From what I understand about multiple myeloma, there are no two cases that are alike. And he certainly would be an example of a person who does not get tired. He wears everyone else out. I mean, you can see him. He's indefatigable.
I got seniority on it.
I love this man's music. I love his music. You know, it's much nicer than his bone marrow, I must say, you know, but that we're going to try to approach.
Thank God I have gone through such adversity. It's prepared me for this. I know what I got, but I'm not going to shed tears and just bemoan this. I'm going to put a positive shine on it, and I do. You could say, well, it's very dishonest to do that. You know, you have a grave situation. Okay, one part of me knows that, but I elect to be frivolous. I like to tell my jokes, and hell with it.
I remember seeing Mr. Schoenberg, who was our great New York Times critic, and I asked him if he had ever heard a piece that Jens was playing that night by Kettleby called In a Persian Market. And Mr. Schoenberg said to me, of course I have in dribs and drabs in every elevator in America. He says, but I've never heard the whole thing, and that's why I'm here today. Jens is the only one who can do this. And it's a great, great work, and Jens said he liked it so much, it meant a lot to him in his childhood. And if you hear this in a Persian market, you'll hear all of the themes you've ever heard in every Western movie, Indian movie, everything else. It's humorous and wonderful. Right. And at the end, Jens says, I like this so much, I'm going to play it again. So we played it twice for the audience, and they all loved it.
I'm going down in triumph. All guns going. I'll fire every damn cannon I got. But I'm going to try to go down with a smile on my face. I bet you I do. I bet you I do.
Yeah, I have. I'm going to do the trumpet overture, which it's typical of what I do. I've never done trumpet overture. I've only seen it in the collected works, but it has to be done. And if I were picking the top quality Mendelssohn, I would certainly pick some of the other overtures, Beautiful Melusine or Midsummer Night's Dream, but that's not my point. My point is to take my people on a wonderful journey through music history, which means we're going to touch a lot of things that are not the sublime masterpieces, but typify an age. Well, thank you, and I'm glad you see that, and it's just enormously helpful. And thank you. Bye. Oh, good God, you're a valuable and irreplaceable institution. That's the New Yorker.
Come on, count! Pa-pa-pa-pa! You gotta be counting in the bar before. Let's leave it for now, Jerry. You gotta count. Ya-da-da-da, ya-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-pa. You're part of a running eighth note. 1, 2, 1. No, you're late. You cannot start counting at that point. Ya-pa-pa-bita-pa-pa-bita-pa-pa-pa. Put a pen in your butt so you're there. Come on. No siesta.
Oh, you can hear a few expletives too about that, because the ninth time when they don't count, sometimes I said, look, if you're not going to count, here's $10. Just get out of my life. There's something so phenomenally exciting when you have a downbeat and everybody, the concertmaster at 6 feet and the timpani player at 30 feet, where they're exactly together.
Come on, it's too beautiful.
I've never had the chance to really realize how important it is for the music to be so precise with the way you actually count. You know, it sounds stupid if you hear him. He always says, count, count. And sometimes we think, okay, we're counting, but really counting and really being incredibly precise. I think I've learned a lot about this.
Count, 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 count. Count. Overdo it, no prettiness, no prettiness with me. Please overdo it, make it grotesque, violent, vulgar, please. And each note. Heifetz, he knew what he was doing. Scratch. Leave prettiness for Juilliard, please. 1, 2, 1. Come on. Kill it.
If he shouts at the musicians or if he is not happy with something, it's never something personal. It's just that he cares so much about music.
Not tight, tight, not front arm. Tight, tight. Ready. Come on. No retard, no retard. When you do it, you take your retards, but not here.
The urgency of the way the music flows through Jens Nygaard, he must have it at this point in his life.
Come on, Beethoven's a great experience. Get with me.
Don't suavitize. He didn't want to be suavatized as a person, and he doesn't like suavatized music making.
Don't rush. Little. Okay, scratch. Yup, buff. Come on, Larry, scratch. And again. Too soon on the G. That's a full half quarter. Ta-da. Now come on. Kill it. Kill it. Okay, you got to kill it. Kill it. Kill it.
Jens has the courage to do what is meant to be, to find out what is meant to be, to find the excellence, to realize what is meant to be, and to do it. Whatever difficulties there are, do it. And it's that. It has something to do with music and nothing to do with music.
I've been on the sidelines. I've been kept out for 30, 35 years. And now is my day. Now is my day to have the greatest orchestra in the world. I know exactly how to do it.